All right, I do want to get now to your stimulus update on this Monday. And boy, was it a bunch of theatrics this weekend as President Trump dragged out his little dog and pony show, presented to the world as he was the white knight riding in on his horse to save us all. Wasn't this something I predicted, folks, over the past few weeks? Did I not call it? Did I not say it? The good cop, bad cop? I knew it was coming. I could smell it. I could smell it in the air like a stinky fish. And that's exactly what happened. You know, Senate Republicans were, what's the D word? They were dithering, not getting anything done. House Democrats, of course, passed their HEROES Act 2.5 months ago, and yes, it was loaded with fluff. It had a lot of bloat in it, a lot of liberal bloat. It's like after having a liberal turkey dinner, feel a little bloaty. So negotiate, cut out some of the bloat. And then in response, what did they do? They stuck in some of their own bloat, like an FBI building, and other bloat from Republicans. So I love this hypocrisy, want to criticize Democrats for that, and then they go and do it themselves. Anyway, they couldn't come to an agreement, and it looked like President Trump was starting to lay the groundwork for some executive action. He was looking at these poll numbers, which have been pretty awful. Now we have these battleground numbers right now from the battleground states in the election, 84 days until election day at this point. And he is down in Florida. That is now leaning Biden and is likely to vote Biden. Florida, 29 electoral votes. No president, no Republican president, no Republican candidate in 100 years has won the presidency without carrying Florida. He loses Florida, he's done. He's also down in blue state Pennsylvania now, which he won handily over Hillary Clinton. Michigan, he also won. He's losing now to Biden. The list goes on right now. It's not looking good for President Trump in these poll numbers. So what does he do? He thinks, I need some political theatrics. And make no mistake, do not fall for the garbage. Do not fall for the BS. This was political theatrics 100%. Even Ben Sasse, Senator Ben Sasse from Nebraska, had this to say about these bills, or these so-called bills that President Trump kept wanting to call them this weekend. They were executive actions. They weren't bills at all. Bills have to be passed by Congress, but I think that's where this contentious behavior came from these senators. So the Senate Judiciary and Finance Committee Senator Ben Sasse from Nebraska put out a statement blasting the president. Republican Ben Sasse said this: the pen and phone theory of executive lawmaking is unconstitutional slop, S-L-O-P, unconstitutional slop, he said. Senator Ben Sasse said President Obama did not have the power to unilaterally rewrite immigration law with DACA. And guess what? President Trump does not have the power to unilaterally rewrite the payroll tax law. Under the Constitution, that power belongs to the American people acting through their members of Congress. Ouch. You know it's bad when you have senators telling you that this is not going to go anywhere, and it's unconstitutional. Asked about that very question was Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin. He was asked about that on Fox News Sunday. Listen.
Mr. Secretary, I want to refer to something that Speaker Pelosi referenced, and that was the comment from Republican Senator Ben Sasse that this governing by executive action is, his words, unconstitutional slop. What makes you think that spending over $100 billion that Congress has not appropriated for these specific purposes is legal? And what happens if there's a court suit and all of the actions that the president took yesterday are blocked by a federal court?
Well, Chris, let me just say we've cleared with the Office of Legal Counsel all these actions before they went to the president. The president knew unemployment insurance was ending. He said, let's continue at $400. By the way, the 25% from the states, they can either take that out of the money we've already given them, or the president can waive that. We've been told by the states they can get this up and running immediately. And I would say if the Democrats want to challenge us in court and hold up unemployment benefits to those hardworking Americans that are out of a job because of COVID, they're going to have a lot of explaining to do.
As we say, you have cut the federal unemployment benefit from $600 to $400, $300 from the feds, $100, this is a week, $100 from states, but you say a lot of that would come from federal money they've already received. Do you really think that the hundreds of millions of that the millions of families that lost jobs because of the virus don't need that money, that they don't need the extra $200 a week?
Chris, let me be clear. First of all, on the 25%, that's coming from money we already gave the states. So this is effectively 100% paid for by the federal government. Let me also remind you that Obama, during the financial crisis, paid a $25 top-up. So this has never been done in the history of time. We thought $400 was a fair compromise, but let me just also say, we offered to continue to pay $600 while we negotiate, and the Democrats turned that down.
Yeah, but that was for a 2-week extension. That was nothing permanent. That was a 2-week extension, and Democrats didn't want this little piecemeal plan put together. 2-week extension so they can kick the can down the street a little bit more. So also, talking about President Obama years ago during the financial crisis in 2008, 2009, he's not president right now. I mean, let's be honest. The president of the United States is Donald Trump, and he claimed bigger and better than what the Democrats wanted. So that's not true, right? His words that our stimulus will be bigger than and better than what Democrats want. Well, Democrats wanted $600 a week in unemployment benefits to continue through the end of the year. What did we get? Not bigger, not better, $400 per week. And also, it's on top of what the states now have to deal with. The states are going to have to try to administer this 25% part of it. They're going to try to, and he said we spoke to different states that said they were fine with this and they're excited about it. What states? Did you speak to some red states? Because there are states all across the country right now that are being crushed. And to now put this layer of complexity on top of them to pay, they don't have the money. I know that you think that they're sitting on these hundreds of billions of dollars, but where is that money going to come from to pay for that state, the state services, to pay for firefighters, to pay for the police departments, to take care of those essential services and frontline workers in those states? So this idea that, we've been sitting here and Democrats didn't want to negotiate with us, it's just garbage. But again, your plan was to be bigger and better. You said it yourself, bigger and better, and yet it's less and not better. So, okay, your words. Guess it doesn't matter, right? Should I call them out? Senator Chuck Schumer was on as well to talk about this and was, talked about whether or not this is unconstitutional. Can the president get any of these things through? And he said this.
Talk about the president's proposals. First of all, Trump wants to replace the $600 unemployment benefit, the federal benefit, with a $300 federal benefit paid for with disaster relief funds. He says the states will kick in another $100. Does he have the power to do that? Will you go to court to stop him?
Well, let me first say, George, that overall we have this huge crisis, the largest economic crisis since the Depression, the greatest health crisis since the pandemic. And unfortunately, the president's executive orders, described in one word, could be paltry. In 3 words, unworkable, weak, and far too narrow. The event at the country club is just what Trump does, a big show, but it doesn't do anything. And as the American people look at these executive orders, they'll see they don't come close to doing the job.
He's right. Let's go through these numbers now. Now, I'm a realist. Now, if any of these plans did something, okay, if any of these had a real sizable impact on the American people, I'd say, fine, let's be real here, right? If President Obama passed these things and I'm sitting here and I'm looking at them and they do nothing like it appears that these under Trump do, I'm going to say the same thing about Obama as I would about Trump, that this is political theatrics. So let's dive into these, shall we, a little bit more deeply. So we have the payroll tax cuts, okay? This would effectively give people about a 6% increase in their taxes, and it would be a suspension of those taxes through the end of the year. Now, the problem with that is that it's just a suspension of that, which means it'll have to be paid at some point. And many employers are saying, wait a minute, we're not going to just give people all of that money in their paycheck, because what happens in a few months then when President Trump doesn't win re-election and now suddenly there's no existing moratorium and now we as an employer are expected to pay those taxes. So you're just going to suspend it? That's not going to help anyone. Also, never mind the fact that he's not Congress, and for him to unilaterally withhold payroll taxes is also probably going to face a major court battle. And look, let's be clear about this. It's not going to necessarily come from Democrats. You have to understand that we have three co-equal branches of government. So this idea that Democrats are going to be the bad people here and they're going to fight this in the court, no, you have plenty of Republicans who also think this is unconstitutional. And if this goes to the courts, it's not because Democrats are trying to look bad or trying to stop mean Mr. President. No. It's because you have branches of government for a reason. It's the reason the president can't just willy-nilly send out $1,200 stimulus checks right now. He knows he can't. But apparently he, I guess, forgot that he doesn't control taxes. That's the power of the purse. He doesn't have the power to do taxation in the country. That's what Congress has the power to do. It's in our Constitution, for crying out loud. I mean, that would be like Nancy Pelosi suddenly trying to issue trade deals. That comes from the executive branch. I mean, that's what the power the presidency has on trade deals. So this idea that payroll taxes are going to be held is also ridiculous. It's unconstitutional, as Ben Sasse mentioned. The president does not have the power to rewrite payroll tax law. The Constitution, the power belongs to the American people acting through members of Congress. The American people call upon Congress to change tax law, not the President of the United States. So that's just one piece of this, payroll tax cuts. Eviction moratorium was the other big one. Now, I was excited about this. I thought, okay, maybe the president can put in some sort of eviction moratorium. But guess what? No. Very little teeth in this at all. And this is something that George Stephanopoulos brought up specifically with Larry Kudlow. And they got pretty testy about it because in this act that the president signed, there's nothing about it keeping people from losing their homes. Listen.
That's a key point. A second key point was the eviction moratorium. Because the Democrats rejected various compromises, at least twice, to my knowledge, President felt he had to take action, and it will be timely action, and it will be temporary action, to be sure, probably mostly out to the end of this year. But let's help those who still need help.
But Larry, in fact, the president doesn't extend
great progress, but we had to take action.
In fact, the president doesn't extend the federal eviction moratorium. I looked at the executive order. It doesn't do that. It simply directs HUD to find a way to help people and identify federal funds. It doesn't include extending the eviction moratorium.
Well, look, that's not entirely true. I mean,
yes, it is. Yes, it is entirely true. There is no actual moratorium. It basically asks HUD under Ben Carson. Remember, I predicted this last week. Under Ben Carson, basically to identify funds that might be available to keep people from possibly being evicted, and it only goes to those houses which are under federally backed mortgages like Fannie and Freddie. So let me paint you a picture. Let's say I'm a landlord and I have a mortgage on the property. It's a Fannie mortgage, okay? And you are a tenant in my property and you're about to be evicted. Well, under this, it would allow you to sort of see if there's something available for you. But you would have to, number one, that your landlord has a federally backed mortgage to even ask that question. I remember I was talking to my wife about it over breakfast this morning. She said, well, how are they going to know? I said, that's a great question. Are you, and by the way, is a landlord going to tell you that? Is a landlord going to just put it up on a sign in the hallway that says, I have a Fannie or Freddie mortgage? So again, this does not answer that question. Larry Kudlow went on to try to explain it a little bit.
Secretary of Health, if any determination is made that there's a health threat of community spread due to evictions or forbearance due to coming on top of evictions, that they would take action. So that's clear, and I think that's exactly what the health secretary is going to do. We also are going to be working through other agencies to spend some money for example, rental assistance. And federally backed housing, whether it's single family or multifamily, if there's any forbearance or if landlords make a request, then there will be no eviction during that process. So it just says there's going to be a review. I can tell you, George, the intent of that is that the review will prevent any evictions.
Okay. You heard that right here. We'll play this tape back when people start losing their homes in the next few days. Okay? How many of you are facing eviction right now? I've seen it already from you in my comments here. How many of you have already faced eviction? How many of you have already received eviction notices? If they can do this and it actually works, then great. If remember, there's 44 million people that are expected to lose their homes and face eviction. This is only going to help a small percentage of them. If it helps even a small percentage, fine, good. But it sounds to me like it's a cluster mess. How is this going to come to fruition? There is no national program in place. There's nothing nationally that would mandate an eviction moratorium. The problem, it was so disingenuous the other night when the president got up at the podium and said, Democrats weren't concerned with evictions. Are you crazy? This is in the HEROES Act. $200 billion for rental assistance and landlord assistance. So people don't lose their home for lack of being able to pay their rent. The problem with this whole moratorium garbage, by the way, it sounds good. All it does is kick the can down the street. You know that. I know that. It's kicking the can down the street. So in 2 months, when the moratorium is up, guess what? Now you have 2 additional months of rent you have to pay. It doesn't absolve you of paying the rent. And by the way, you haven't had any money coming in because you've lost your job on top of it. No rental assistance. On top of the fact that the can has been kicked down the road 2 months. So the Democrats specifically addressed that issue with rental assistance. Again, I talk about this virtual circle, right? You want me to tell you again? I will. Person doesn't pay their rent. That means that the landlord might not have enough money to pay the mortgage. Then that means they'll have to default on that mortgage, which goes to the bank. Banks stop lending. Okay, that's just one piece of this, right? And other people can't get mortgages because the banks default and have major problems. They have to go back into foreclosure and get this house. They don't want to own property. On top of that, property taxes. You don't pay your rent. Homeowner can't pay their property taxes. Then the city doesn't get money. Landlords, police departments, etc. Property taxes fuel our schools, fuel our local services, local emergency services. All of it is one big circle. And when we chop off one piece, it all falls. And that's what's about to happen. This eviction garbage moratorium is nothing big. It's not going to do anything. Bernie Sanders even tweeting about this. He tweeted about a number of things. He was fired up about this over the weekend. He said, President Trump, stop being a phony. Your executive order on housing is a cruel joke. Let me zoom in on this a little bit if I can. Your executive order on housing is a cruel joke. Won't prevent one tenant from being evicted or provide 1 cent to pay the rent. 40 million Americans are in danger of being evicted. Stop lying. Cancel rent now. I'm a landlord, and I'm in support of that. Cancel rent. Cancel rent right now. We're in a pandemic. I'm a landlord. That's what I do. I'm a real estate investor. I saw someone before the show saying, the reason Clayton wants a stimulus is because, he'd be broke if he... No, I wouldn't. Because I'm smart with my money. We've had tenants that haven't been able to pay rent. We've worked with them to make sure that they're taken care of. I don't want them homeless. But yeah, have a federal program right now that erases rent or helps them pay the rent. Because to me, erasing rent is not enough. I agree with Bernie Sanders in wanting to help people, but when you just erase rent, there are also landlords in this mix who have to pay a mortgage. So erasing rent could really harm landlords also in that they won't be able to pay the bank and then they'll lose the house. And then that tenant will be thrown out of the house also. So, I don't know if Bernie Sanders thought about that, but that's an important piece of this. If that house goes into foreclosure, that bank will have to kick that person out. So just remember that. There needs to be rental assistance. There needs to be landlord assistance. It can't just be one thing or the other. He goes on to say that Trump and Senate Republicans have made it clear what their agenda is: defund Social Security and Medicare, defund unemployment benefits, dismantle the Postal Service, more tax breaks for the 1%, more corporate welfare for defense contractors. They must be defeated big time. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. I'm through playing games here, folks. Americans are being crushed. There is a huge wage disparity in this country. There's a huge income gap in this country. America is failing its people. America is failing its people, plain and simple. If you don't think that that's the case, and you want to hold true to believing that President Trump is doing more than just political theatrics, why in the world do you hold it at Bedminster, at your golf resort, which, by the way, costs $350,000 to be a club member of the Bedminster Golf Club Resort in New Jersey? He has all of these people up at the while he's there at the podium clapping, while there's reporters there asking legitimate questions, and then he gets frustrated and walks out.
Congress, are you trying to set a new precedent that the president can go around Congress and decide how money is
You ever hear the
collected
word
and spent?
obstruction? They've obstructed. Congress has obstructed. The Democrats have obstructed people from getting desperately needed money. Go ahead, please, right here.
President,
No,
why do you
no,
keep
you're
saying
finished.
that
Go
you
ahead,
passed
please.
Veterans Choice?
Please.
You said that you passed Veterans Choice. It was passed in 2014.
Okay, excuse me. Go ahead,
But
please.
it's a false statement, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much.
Because he's been lying about veterans. He's been lying about a number of things. I'm through. Look, when someone lies, when a politician lies, you're suddenly partisan. I mean, it's ridiculous. I don't care who you are, Republican or Democrat. If you're lying, if you're full of it, I'm going to call you out about it. And the president is full of it on these executive orders. And I've gone after Democrats on these pension pieces in their big bloated HEROES Act. All of this money to kind of fix how these broken blue states have governed. Look, blue states have done a pretty horrible job. Like me, I'm a real estate investor. I would never invest in California because it's awful. It's horribly run. It's a disaster. That's why so many people are leaving and going to a red state like Texas, where you have all of these big Fortune 500 companies moving there. So I know what works and what doesn't. And I'm looking at what President Trump is saying right now, and he's blowing smoke. And everyone should know that that's the case. So when Bernie Sanders say their agenda right now is to defund Social Security and Medicare, I absolutely agree with that. I've been saying it right here on the show. Have I not? If you've been watching me for any long length of time, you know that I believe that this whole stimulus plan with the payroll tax cut thing that President Trump wants to do is a Trojan horse to eliminate Social Security. That's exactly what it is. Remember, how the federal government makes money is from payroll taxes. If you eliminate payroll taxes, you eliminate Social Security and you eliminate Medicare, two things that Republicans hate more than anything: Social Security and Medicare. They only like it during an election year when they hear from elderly voters, "You're not going to get rid of Social Security, are you, Senator?" "Oh, no, not going to do that." Wink, wink. Wink, wink. I don't buy that for a second.
Come on, man.
Exactly. I don't buy that for a second. Too smart to know that, right? So President Trump was asked this question yesterday. So we've got some news from President Trump on Social Security. This whole payroll tax cut thing you want, how are you going to pay for Social Security? It looks like it's going to be slashed, Mr. President. He answered that on the tarmac. Listen.
Through the general fund, not through Social Security. This will have no impact on Social Security. We're going to, through the general fund, reimburse. This will have zero impact on Social Security.
Okay. Did you even hear his little Freudian slip there? He's like, this will be impact. I mean, it'll be protected. It'll be taken care of. We're going to reimburse it out of the general fund. Okay. If it can be reimbursed out of the general fund, can we use the general fund for other things? I got an idea with that general fund. How about we pay stimulus checks for all Americans that need it right now, $1,200? How about we pay for rental assistance out of the general fund? That's what I'm going to start calling the money that my wife and I have, in a junk drawer, like coins and stuff. I'm going to call that the general fund. You want to go get some Chinese food tonight? Let's take that money out of the general fund. Where's that? Oh, it's in that junk drawer over there. There's a bunch of pennies in there. The general fund, my foot. Come on. Give me a break.
Come on, man.
Exactly. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. So there's the very latest on those three pieces. But what about the remaining piece, which we're not hearing much news about, is that student loan piece. And it is, the fourth thing that the president signed, the student loan interest, buffer, whatever you want to call it. That appears to be something that's going to can remain through another few months through the end of the year. That doesn't seem like that's going to be much of a fight, because the education department already did that under Betsy DeVos, where you wouldn't have to pay interest payments on your student loans while you're unemployed or we're dealing with this pandemic. Okay. But again, all it does is just kick the can further down the street. You're going to have to pay it at some point. You just don't have to pay it now. Again, eviction moratorium, you have to pay rent sometime, just not now. Democrats would forgive up to $10,000 in the HEROES Act of student loan debt. $10,000? What would that do for you if you have a student loan bill? If they were able to wipe away $10,000, I still think it doesn't go far enough. You know, our young people are being saddled with ridiculous student loan debt right now by these universities that are doing nothing to help our kids. And by the way, these degrees that they're getting are mostly worthless. Let's be honest. In the United States, these degrees, most people won't even use them unless they went to school for a specific reason, like to become a doctor or a lawyer, an architect, or something where they need those specialized degrees. You're getting a liberal arts degree where you repeat the first 2 years of the first 2 years of your college. You're repeating high school classes, and you're $70,000 in debt for a degree that you're not even going to use. It's highway robbery. So at least under the HEROES Act, they would forgive up to $10,000 under the Democrats' plan. But under President Trump's plan, it's simply a pause on payments. So, you know, where is all this money going to come from? If the country will not make money through payroll taxes and it's going to dole out more money for unemployment, much of this is going to come from the Disaster Relief Fund. That's the government's, break the glass in case of emergency fund, in case we have a hurricane, which, by the way, we're in the middle of hurricane season. And last week, to make matters even worse, the forecasting experts have now upgraded the threat level for the hurricane season, going from pretty bad to darn near really bad. And now we're going to tap into the Emergency Relief Fund. That has about $70 million in that fund. That's it. And after these orders, it'll be depleted by almost 2/3. So now there's not going to even be any money in the Hurricane Relief Fund. Are you a praying kind of a person? Because I think we need to be praying right now. Nancy Pelosi was asked specifically about all of these moves this weekend. She was pretty indignant. She said, "Look, Dana Bash, I'm not going to negotiate with you on this. But we've come to the table. We've been willing to negotiate. We dropped $1 trillion off of our proposal. We went from 3.4 to 2.4 trillion. That's a pretty big concession. And Republicans still didn't want to come to the table."
What the president's advisor said it really shows the weakness and the meagerness of what the president proposed. First of all, he's saying states have the money. No, they don't. They have expenses from the coronavirus. They have lost revenue. Because of that, they are firing healthcare workers, first responders, teachers, and the rest. Sanitation, transportation workers, because they don't have the money. Second of all, everything is left out. Our assistance to the schools, feeding the hungry, helping people who are going to be evicted. The president's didn't even do a moratorium. He just did a study or a look at a moratorium. So again, something's wrong. Either the president doesn't know what he's talking about, clearly his aides don't know what he is talking about, or something's very wrong here.
Yes, that's a good way to sum it up. Something is very wrong here. Chuck Schumer had more to say on this whole thing, perhaps a little bit more eloquently. It frustrates me to listen to Nancy Pelosi. I think I think often her heart is in the right place, but gosh, I just wish she could speak. Spit it out, Nancy. Spit it out. Chuck Schumer, more to the point and more forthright in his comments.
In two ways. One, what they proposed, and second, what's left out. What's proposed. On the unemployment benefit, first, the $600 a week has been very successful. It's kept millions of people out of poverty. It's pumped more money into the economy. Consumer spending is probably the best thing going in the economy.
The president says it keeps people from working.
they want to cut it. The evidence shows that's not the case. That belittles the American people. Americans want to work, but with 10, 11% unemployment, you can't find the job, and people shouldn't be given a pay cut. But second, this is an unworkable plan. Most states will take months to implement it because it's brand new. It's sort of put together with spit and paste. And many states, because they have to chip in $100 and they don't have money, won't do it. And to boot, it depletes the Hurricane Trust Fund to defer this money, to pay for this money at a time when we're at the height of hurricane season.
So he brings up a good point there about program would not even go in place for many, many months because the onus is now on the states to put this program in place. And as experts point out, this is not an extension of the unemployment plan that we've already had over the past few weeks, the $600. This would be basically creating an entirely new program for unemployment. This is not the current program we had. I saw some of you asking in the chat, well, will this just be a continuation of what I was making, but just instead of $600, it'll be $400? No. This is an entirely separate program. And now the onus would have to fall on the states to come up with a system to implement this. They are not in any capacity to do that. States are a disaster right now. States are in a crisis. They have old computer systems. They do not have a framework. They do not have employees that can set this up. And what are you going to do? Set up a patchwork of these state systems in order to put this unemployment benefits in place? Come on. Ridiculous. Look, I know that the president had advisors that said, Mr. President, your poll numbers are literally in the toilet right now. You need to do something that shows the American people you care. What can we do? Let's put out some phony BS that the media will jump onto. And that's exactly what the media did here. Shame on the media for not studying this more deeply. Shame on the media for just going along with this as if the headlines are like, President passes 4 executive actions on stimulus. Okay, that's the headline? Get people's hopes up? That's what they did here. They got people's hopes up for nothing because these things have no teeth and they're not going to go anywhere. And the president knows it. He doesn't have the power to do this. So let me ask you our trivia question of the day, Grover's trivia question of the day. Remember, I promised you. So Grover's trivia, this is a tough one. Can you tell me in the chat, Grover. Okay, I'll ask it for Grover. He's incapacitated at the moment. Today's trivia question of the day, which Republican senator blasted the president for his actions on these executive orders and said this: the pen and phone theory of executive lawmaking is unconstitutional slop. President Trump does not have the power to unilaterally rewrite the payroll tax law under the Constitution. That power belongs to the American people acting through their members of Congress. Can you tell me in the chat, who is that Republican senator that slammed the president for his for his action, his executive actions? Who's the first person that's going to answer it here in the chat? Let me see. Who's the first person that's going to answer it? Aaron Rick. Ben Sass, you're the first one. Aaron Rick. Congratulations, Aaron Rick. Aaron Rick is the winner of the Everyone Give Aaron a Thumbs Up. Say congrats, Aaron. Aaron Rick is our... And Grover says thank you. Aaron Rick is the winner. Grover is thrilled that you got his answer correct. See, that's what see? If you knew there's a quiz, you're paying attention. That's how we do it. That's how I used to pay attention in class. If you knew you had to pay attention, right? There's going to be a pop quiz at the end. Then you'll pay more attention to it. So that's the very latest on the stimulus news today. That's the very latest on all of your morning business news. We thank you so much for subscribing and being a part of our show. Don't forget that you can subscribe and get our free Morning Invest newsletter. It's delivered to your inbox first thing in the morning at morninginvest.com. Just go there to sign up, totally free. You can read the news in about 5 minutes and be delivered right to your inbox. So thank you so much for subscribing and smashing that like button. I really appreciate it. Oh, and our mugs are available now too, right there on the storefront on our website. And we've also got our new sweatshirts as well. I'm super excited about these. I just ordered mine for the fall. It's a good fall one as well. I like the black. There's a couple of other colors you can pick from, but I'm a fan of the black. So that's that. Also, thank you so much for anyone who wants to check out our Paranormal Post channel. If you're interested in paranormal news, we just published this on our YouTube channel. It's paranormalpost.com. Here is the channel if you want to check it out. youtube.com/paranormalpost. You can just hit the little subscribe button right there. And the video that we published yesterday,
he stepped out of the air traffic control
is
tower
this one?
and he couldn't believe his eyes.
On the
He'd seen
Tehran
all
UFO
manner of
incident?
aircraft his entire life. He saw a glowing
And I love our new
rectangle
graphics
with
and open.
flashing red
Check this
lights
out.
going up and down.
We put
Then
a lot of hard work
it suddenly
into this.
disappeared and reappeared 1 mile away.
Love this. Put a lot of work into this. Love the beaming up of the Paranormal Post. Love it, love it, love it. Anyway.
Welcome to the Paranormal Post. I'm Clayton Morris.
So that's our Paranormal Post channel. Anyone who wants to subscribe and is interested in mysteries, unsolved stories, and these are true. These are true stories. Of course, I've covered UFOs for years. I've been a fan of that. I've interviewed high-level members of the military, senators, former Air Force One pilot, and flew the president, who was tracked by a UFO. So this stuff is endlessly fascinating to me. And, occasionally I'll bring you some of that news here on the show. But if you want more of that stuff, come on over there and subscribe.